back to We've Got Issues. We've
Got
been
issues.
away, but we're back and better than ever. I am
I wouldn't
your
say better. I would say different.
different. Uh,
All new, all
all new,
different.
all different. We've got
Yeah.
issues. Come along with us on this journey until we become the heroic age of We've Got Issues.
I like
So,
that. We're in the silver age now. We're chill.
ooh.
These are the good
Um,
days.
My name is, as always, is Evan. And joining me, as always, is the amazing vocal talents of the Fizza.
Huzzah!
The Fizza.
Yeah.
How are you, Fizza?
I have come. I have seen. I am talking.
You are talking.
I'm coming. All right. What's the first what's the first news on the agenda?
Well, so
It's
today's
so long. We got so much to talk about.
yeah, well, today's episode is going to be slightly different because it's going to be a more concentrated episode. We'll see how much time we have left over, but
Concentrated issues. Concentrated issues.
well, the
I'm
biggest
sorry.
concentrated
Sorry.
issue
I'm
right
sorry.
now, especially going into this weekend, because you know what this weekend is, right?
What is this weekend?
So this weekend is the big virtual online DC Comics convention that they are throwing for themselves.
They're pushing it.
Yeah, it's gonna be something.
I think really quick we should just talk about some of the big things in that has happened. Like,
Well, yeah,
the-
because the list that so they released this page of names of all the talent that's going to be partaking in this convention, and now most of them don't even work for that company anymore. And so essentially, what happened about a week ago, last Monday, which for those viewing this in the distant future, looks like Impulse or whoever, would have been August. What was last Monday? Do you know offhand?
I like how you introduce it and be like, it would be August, probably the 10th, since it's Monday again and it's the 17th.
Yeah, so, yeah, the 10th. I'm sorry, we're still in Corona here. Every day is the same. There are no dates.
Today is actually different for me because it is the anniversary of my father's birthday, who passed away several years ago now.
Oh,
So I do remember this day,
well,
17th of August.
my condolences and happy birthday,
Thank
I
you.
guess.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm sure he's somewhere having a cigar and eating some pie.
He was a big fan of
Everyone should
pie.
on their birthday. Like everyone should on their birthday. You know,
Yeah.
like a cigarette and a pancake. I knew I'd get you laugh. All right, dude. That happened, but so much else has happened, dude. Like,
Well, I didn't
um,
even finish saying what happened on Monday,
Oh, yeah.
August the 10th.
tell us what happened.
I
on
was
Monday.
trying to figure out what the date was, but I never. So what happened is,
What happened?
um,
What happened?
so a bunch of creative people and departments over at DC Comics Warner Brothers showed up on Monday morning only to find out that they no longer had jobs. Which, I mean, if you put aside the whole it happening on a Monday when really you should never fire anyone on a Monday, but that's the whole besides the point. And the thing that makes this particularly just
Terrible?
like, yeah, it's the sheer amount of people that showed up to find out that whole departments got shelved.
Departments, you said.
Yeah. Uh,
How can a comic book company exist without all its departments?
Well, so DC Comics had several different departments. They had a department, DC Direct, that focused more on toys and collectibles.
Right.
They had a streaming platform called DC Universe. DC Comics actually had a bunch of different stuff going on other than just the primary publishing imprint.
And who got the axe? Who got axed?
So, a ton of, well, I mean, we might as well just start at the top. Bob Harris, who's been primarily, I forget what his official title is, overseeing publisher or whatever, but you know who Bob Harris is, right? He's basically been the guy at DC for like, I don't know, since the 90s? You there?
I'm here, I said forever.
Yeah. So he's no longer there. And a ton of writers, artists, who have been with the company for a long, long time. I mean, literally, to go through all the names would be a show in of itself. But
what departments got axed? The whole department's got axed. Which departments did they lose?
Well, so the DC Direct department that has been responsible for making all of those amazing DC comic related statues and figures and collectibles no longer exists. There is rumors that I won't really get into with them of DC now in talks with other possible merchandising manufacturers, but their own their own DC Direct, which was created back in the 90s, I think.
I don't know.
Is no longer there. As we kind of saw coming for the past month, DC's own online streaming platform, DC Universe, is being shut down, with Jim Lee himself later confirming that pretty much all the original programming that was created for that service is now being moved elsewhere, most notably either HBO Max, with Stargirl in particular being moved to the CW.
I have bad feelings when it comes to what's going to be happening, or bad omens when it comes to what's going to be happening with Young Justice. We just got you back.
Yeah. Well, right, and so so we should quickly go over the shows that we know.
Young Justice, like, I don't think any service would want that.
So we should quickly go over the shows that have already been confirmed to be continuing past this point.
Okay, tell us.
Because that raises a very interesting question. So the shows that have been confirmed to be continuing: Doom Patrol, Stargirl,
Cool.
and possibly Titans.
Nah.
Although nothing has really been said about Titans since like March, and the future status. So basically, the shows that we know are Stargirl over on DC and Doom Patrol, with the Harley Quinn cartoon getting reruns over on HBO Max. We don't know about a season 3 for the Harley Quinn cartoon. We don't know what the current status of Titans at this point really is anymore. And we don't know, we haven't heard a peep about Young Justice, which, as you point out, is kind of in a very unique situation all of its own. Because, of course, part of the reason why it was brought back to begin with was to try to drum up viewership for this streaming service that now no longer even will exist.
And the thing about it is it's always had a troubling past. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the reason it got canceled, or part of the reason it got canceled, was because not enough boys watched the show.
Right.
It
The whole
was,
action figure facade.
yeah, the action
Yeah.
figure crowd. And since they didn't watch the show, DC Direct didn't think they could be selling any toys to them. So I guess they
Yeah.
wouldn't have that problem anymore.
So, which is insane principle, but it's, you
It
know,
is,
the
because
reason why a
women
bunch of
like
different
action
cartoons
figures,
have
they've
ended.
never-
So,
Women have never had any toys in their existence through all all time.
yeah.
Women have never had any dolls, just the boys.
I mean, there were rumors of other shenanigans back in the day happening behind the scenes, but
Yeah, of course.
ultimately,
There's always lots of reasons why something happens. It's usually not one thing.
right. But yeah, the lack of action figures being sold was the key point. And, I mean, other than the people who are already diehard Young Justice fans,
So, do we know anything about that? Do we know anything about if that actually worked for them? Did they get good ratings? Could they sell that show?
so DC Universe, like most online streaming platforms, Netflix and what have you, do not actually release viewership numbers.
Right.
So all we really have is their word on it, and they say that it did well. But like, there's no real way to equate what well means, in comparison to like other cartoons or shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Are they doing well in their own streaming service? Are they
Right.
comparing numbers to other things? What's going on there?
Is it still getting new people to sign up just for that show?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of questions that we don't have the answers to.
Exactly. I bet all the old fans were excited. I know I was. I watched
Right.
that show like religiously. I watched it and then immediately rewatched when they showed it. We dropped like 3 or 4 episodes at a time when the show was going on for a while on the DC Direct.
Right.
And I would watch the show, not just all 4 episodes once, I would just watch it again right after. Because I was so into that show, and I was like, what did I miss the first time? Every time that show came out, I was super excited, and I feel like I'm like that with very few shows, if any.
It's an amazing show, and
Fantastic universe.
the last season was somewhat divisive amongst fans, but
Yeah,
I liked
was,
it.
but I think that's what made it. That was what made it interesting to me. That people wanted to talk about why they did or didn't like something. And for me, I was happy with the whole show.
Me too.
Mostly because I got more of it. But I think that they never don't do justice to some part of the DC old universes that they take and meld into their chronology, their Earth. They never do them injustice. Although I will say, since they injustice, they always do a pretty good job with them. I will say that I understand a lot of the criticism, and I felt it too. I mean, I felt it back in the day when we introduced Secret for the 1 episode and Harm. I don't know if you're familiar with the old Young Justice show. I mean, book, comic book.
From the 90s?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Which
actually only
Impulse
read it
was a
because
member. Yes. That was
I actually only read it.
back in the day. That was one of the few DC titles that I actually read on a pretty regular basis. So.
Nice. I only actually read it after watching the Young Justice TV show. Although I came to realize Young Justice was more Teen Titans.
Definitely.
But still, I very much enjoy how they put the things together. But to be fair, in the comic book, Harm and Secret are fantastically more complex characters.
So I know about Secret. I don't know about the other one.
Harm?
Yes.
You don't remember Harm?
No, So
I feel like there's a video that you can look up that Super Effective might have done about harm. I would check out his YouTube station because he's pretty good with Teen Titans and Young Justice related characters.
okay.
Aside from that, I don't want to spend the time it would take to like break down the differences between the harm. But I will say that he was okay. The secret character, as you know, she was a much bigger part of the book.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, and
Yeah.
her only being in there a little bit. When I originally saw that, I was a little sad about that. But to be fair, I think the main overall story is so compelling for the Young Justice. I don't want to say narrative, but so the Young Justice, the universe that they're building there, they're doing such a good job with what they have, and even the little gripes I have when I was watching the last season would pale in comparison to some. You don't want to hear me talk about the DC animated universe, which thankfully just ended. Oh God. You know my feelings about that.
Well, you're talking about the movies. You're not talking about the classic animated universe. The
No,
Bruce
I'm
Timm.
not talking about the
Yeah.
DC animated universe. I'm talking about the DC animated movie universe. There's an extra M in that.
Yeah, so, that's a good point. So it was announced even before all of this a while back that was ending. That
We
was
finally got that.
before any of this. And of course, Dan DiDio, about a month or so ago, similar, we don't really know if he was fired or quit, but there was a very similar situation.
That he's gone.
Yeah,
He
so
is single-handedly one of the worst people in comics.
I
won't say single-handedly, but that doesn't make sense. He is one of the worst people in
wouldn't.
comics, and I'm thankful he's gone.
Okay.
There was much rejoicing in Fizza land.
I know that a lot of people agree with you on that. He wasn't the best, but I mean, I think he's been vilified a lot. But
let's take a beat here for a second and just say that the difference between the DC animated universe and the DC animated movie universe is that the animated movie universe is based on the
New 52
comic
right.
reboot that they did in 2011. And
Right.
It started with Flashpoint and ended with, what was this last movie called? You really liked it.
I see. That's the thing. I did really like it.
But you liked it.
No, I did really like it. That's what I'm saying. I know you didn't. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What was it called? It was Justice League Dark again, was it?
Yeah, it was Justice League Dark, Dark Side War or something. Yeah, the Dark Side War.
Dark Side War, okay. Well, I was just thankful it was over. It was just another bunch of pissing in the wind, in my opinion. The only good movie in that entire, I want to say 25 movie chronology.
Yeah.
The only one worth a damn is the Wonder Woman movie.
See,
Once again, Wonder
it was
Woman
good. I watched it. I do not agree, but it was good.
Well, I don't think it was as good as the 2008 Wonder Woman animated movie, but I would put it on par with maybe the live-action Wonder Woman movie, which I think is a great, 2/3 of a movie.
But so anyways, yeah, other departments that got canned.
Yeah.
DC had created a whole bunch of different sub-publishing arms within itself to try to grab specific demographics. And from
Like
what?
Black Label?
I'm sorry, what?
Like Black
Yeah,
Label?
like Black Label aimed for a more mature
Wasn't
audiences.
there also Wonder Comic?
Yep, which were aimed for more children.
I think young adults, right? Or was it actually children?
No, it's children.
Okay.
So that was kind of the two extremes. Was Wonder Comics aimed more for kids, and Black Label aimed more for adults. Now I didn't really read much of the Wonder Comics stuff. However, I absolutely loved and consumed most of the Black Label stuff. Definitely felt like it was some of the best stuff coming out of DC for the past couple of years.
What kind of stuff did they produce? Was it? I thought it was just basically they took over Vertigo, right?
So
Vertigo imprint,
that was
more to it?
so basically it was to yeah, it was originally created to kind of basically take Vertigo's place, but there was more to it. Black Label was kind of a place to get talented artists or writers who might not necessarily be interested in a monthly or sticking to continuity or whatever, along with basically being given strict guidelines of this is what you can do in a comic and this is what you can't do. Because it was
Wait,
a
hang
more
on.
at adults, it was like if you want to write a really adult-oriented, gritty Batman comic,
Okay.
this is it. If you want to take, I mean, personally, you know, not to get off track, I mean, I loved all of them, but one of my favorite things that was put out was a Harleen Black Label mini that took a really more psychological approach to kind of re-examining that whole situation there and making it far more nuanced and
What
psychological
situation? I don't-
and just it was amazing.
Could you explain what situation you're talking about?
Sure, of course, the situation that I'm referring to is the transition from Harleen Quinzel, Doctor, to Harley Quinn, Psycho, Joker sidekick chick.
Okay, and so what you're saying is, it sounds like what you're saying is this is sort of like a version of what Marvel did in, like, I think the 70s, Epic Comics, where they put like Epic.
Oh, but so
Comics
much better. I mean, yeah, but
you think
better.
it's better than like Elektra Assassin, where she went and she killed everyone, and it was all like
Yeah, and that still had to like ended up tying. I mean, there are some differences, but yes.
like that's Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz going off on like a crazy.
No, I know, and as a huge Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz, Daredevil
but
fan,
also
but it's
what
not.
Epic did was it put out a lot of independent, like, creator sort of maybe partially owned stuff. I guess I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how Epic did it, but there was like all these weird other sub-universes.
Yeah,
well
basically
as
when I think of Epic, I think of like isn't that also where like the Jim Shooter universe as well? And
No, that's the new universe, I believe.
oh, okay.
New universe
Yeah, that was
is with
another
like Star Brand.
Right.
And
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it's
So
not
Epic,
that.
Epic was an imprint where Marvel could publish more adult-oriented stories that had characters like Elektra in it, as well as they could get like in-state. That's where they republished Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which comic book fans know
Was
as
it that Malibu? Although maybe Marvel owned Malibu at that point.
No, it wasn't Malibu. I don't think Malibu ever established Cadillac and Dinosaurs, but we know it as actual fans know it as Cenozoic Tales. It was mostly published by Kitchen Sink Press.
That's right.
But it had a printing for Epic that was in color, which was pretty impressive because the original printing was in black and white. Also, Epic printed a bunch of, what was it, Dreadstar? Did you ever read Dreadstar?
No, but I've heard. I'm familiar with that character. I never actually read it.
So my comic book store owner guy would like to leave 70s science fiction comics out. And I would say, why do you leave these comics out? And he's like, so nerds like you, so what's this? And start reading them. and end up buying them. And I'm like, curse you, you've accomplished it. So that's how I found out about a lot about 70s like weird and 80s weird like comic books. So I got into some of the Epic imprints. They had like
Yeah, see,
I don't remember the name.
I never got that into the Epic imprint. I of course read the whole Electra Lives, and
I think
thoroughly
they
enjoyed
did
it. I don't know about the whole imprint, but
they did stuff like Six to Sierra to Sirius, like the stars. And they did like books like I think Power Line and like they did like all these. They had like a weird sort of small
yeah.
like universes within it. They republished
So I
republished
guess
independent books.
so I
It
guess
was this weird thing.
so then I guess
really.
from the sounds of it, no. Then because Black Label didn't have like a whole bunch of sub imprints and universes and stuff within that label. So
Did it
you put it
continue
that
to
way, it
publish?
definitely sounds like two different things.
Did Black Label continue to publish the Vertigo imprint stuff?
No.
So all of Vertigo was canceled too.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
Impressive.
Yeah.
That was a bold move. What about, and they already brought Hellblazer out of Vertigo and into the
The
52.
DC mainstream continuity.
Yeah, he's in the mainstream continuity.
So, so just
Continuity.
yeah. So,
Mainstream
um,
continuity. So yeah, so he and Swamp Thing had already been brought during the 52, brought into the mainstream continuity. So was there anything left? Like the Dreaming? Is that, what's that? Is that?
that was kind of now its own thing. It's not necessarily in the main DC continuity, but it's also not a Vertigo title. It's now kind of its own title that DC has been continuing to put out. Although, as a part of the whole DC Slaughterhouse, that and a whole bunch of
Wait, hang on. Is the Dreaming DC Black Label though?
no, it's its own thing. Books of Magic, I think, is technically what it's being put under, but 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 not anymore because along. I mean, basically, if you no longer have if you only have a small fraction of the writers and artists that you used to have, you obviously can't continue to put out the same amount of comics that you used to put out because who's going to be making them?
Okay.
So, the whole Books of Magic stuff, like DC, which, you know, DC was putting out about 50 to 75 titles a month. Going forward, judging based off of future solicits and things getting canceled currently left and right, it'll be they're reducing that by like 20%, which that alone, a big comic book publisher putting out less titles on a regular basis, I am not so much against. It's just kind of unfortunate how the situations under which that is occurring.
What we need to do is to get everyone together and just buy DC Comics and make our own stories because it looks like it's going down.
Well, right. So why is it going down though?
I don't know how they do I don't know how they break down the money those properties generate for the company because it seems to me, even though, I mean, they're all owned by the same parent company, but they would have to take some money, the comic book licensing situation must generate some money from the production or from the presentation of films and TV shows, right?
Yes. So what's happening is two things are kind of happening simultaneously because you're absolutely correct. Comics by themselves do not actually produce that much money, which is why the big two a long time ago were bought out by bigger industries. Currently, what is happening at DC is Warner Brothers was bought out, merged with, basically taken over by AT&T. So that's when you first started to see like a bunch of changes happening. Dan DiDio left, regardless of your feelings on that. DC started to focus much more on digital sales rather than putting stuff out as paper. So all of that started. Of course, it's also normal when a company is taken over by another company, you get rid of the people who were holding positions that you no longer need, right? Because all of a sudden you have, instead of one person doing a job, you have two people or three people, or so that was happening. Plus, a lot of the money that supports DC Comics is from movies and TV shows, which, due to COVID, the whole movie industry has been losing money, which is a whole other issue for a different podcast. But that's been happening as well. So that money that helps other things to survive is now in trouble as well. So my honest assumption, and this is just my personal assumption, is that you would have seen these changes regardless as AT&T continued to basically set itself up at home at Warner Brothers, but it would have been a much slower, it wouldn't have been all at once, or felt like it was all at once. But because of the two things kind of amplifying the situation, I guess, you got this really crazy week, which, Jim Lee, who is there, although there were rumors, but he's still there, although in what capacity, he still has his job, but is it more title or what, we don't know. Also just recently said that, well, comic book publishers like Marvel and DC usually have more of a 5-year plan, in which, of course, things can change. DC is currently undergoing a 2-year publishing plan. So, they are also apparently not big supporters of contracts anymore. They're doing more freelance. A bunch of their old artistic crew that did have private contracts with DC are now no longer there. And now, in a few days, we're having this big self-funded DC extravaganza, which is basically a party like Look at Us. It will be interesting.
You think it really will be interesting, or are you being facetious?
I think it will be interesting the same way going down the highway and seeing a car in smoke is interesting. I think it'll be very telling. I think that there will be no fan participation at this convention now.
Why don't you think there will be?
Because everybody will want to be talking about this, and they won't want to be. Okay. They will want to focus on whatever comics they have coming out in the future, or new movies, or new TV shows. They will not want to be talking about this, and that's all anyone will want to be talking about. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Now, I don't know if it'll be good or bad, but I definitely think it'll be interesting. And it will be very telling to see how they tackle this, what things are in the pipeline now. It'll be interesting. That's for damn sure.
What was the prestige format series known as Earth 2?
Earth 2.
Is that
Oh,
gonna,
so
is
that's
that gonna
probably
still
done.
run?
So that's probably done. The latest version of Green Lantern on Earth 2, well, that was its own thing, which was Earth 2. That's the name that you're looking for. Uh,
Is it the name I'm looking for? There's a lot of Earth 2 characters. There's Wonder Woman
no,
of Earth
but
2. There's Titans of Earth 2.
you're talking about kind of the ultimate line that DC tried to have going on for a while, right? Where they were
That's
trying to
exactly what I'm talking
reimagine
about.
characters
I'm
as
not
more.
specifically talking about the Green Lantern of Earth 2, but I've read a bunch
Yeah.
of them.
So
Uh,
a new one of that just came out, and I wouldn't really be looking for any more from that line
do
after
you think
that.
that's going to be the end of that?
I honestly do, yes.
I think didn't J. Michael Straczynski or someone have a Superman book coming out in this universe, like a 3 or 4 volumes of or something? Or am I thinking of a different writer?
Well, so what's going to happen now is that due to all of this, the higher ups at Warner Brothers and AT&T are going to take a, or probably did. This is actually probably what they did last week after Monday. Is take a long, hard look at all of their publishing plans and reevaluate everything. So, if it's a comic that you've heard of, unless it's already been written and illustrated and is basically just waiting to go to press, it is now a question mark. Which is the most. I mean, I can guarantee for DC Comics some titles will continue. We will continue to have a Superman comic book. We will continue to have a Batman comic book. We will probably continue to have a Wonder Woman comic book. Aquaman just got canceled. I mean, that's the other, and that's the other reason why I honestly believe that this DC fan convention will be so interesting is because DC is now a big question mark. We don't know. Anything we thought we did know, anything that was announced, forget all that, we don't know.
So I'm just going to say something. I feel like one of the reasons DC has had financial problems in the past was because they had been looking for a quick buck with the more exciting and dynamic stuff they were trying to portray in the last 10 years or so. Ever since just before like 2010, somewhere around there, they were chasing, in my opinion, as a company as a whole, were chasing fast ways for it to get income, like just the dazzle of things. And my personal feeling is that led to the New 52 and the more extreme versions of a lot of the characters we knew, and that the loss of income after that, because people, it started out really, really well, and it was definitely one of DC's most profitable changes, but it then
also
became,
didn't last that long.
In my the way I read the numbers, the longer it went, the more they lost money, because what happened was more people were interested at first, and then they just tapered off like pretty drastically,
Right.
which caused them to have to reboot the universe, stop rebooting the universe again, to try to get some of those readers back. But
Right.
and this seems all like monetary, and I'm sure comics have always been about money, just like everything else, but this seems more like pointed at the cash rather than looking for the good way to tell the story, because I grew up in the pre-52 universe of comics, and to this day, I still never really, like, when I see the characters that I know them, and I see them as the
Pre-52, the 90s.
like, I would say like from the '80s to like 2010. That was sort of like the universe that was created. Like the '80s was when they did Crisis,
Right.
and
And then
I'm everything was
2010 is
pretty much
about when that started to, all that stuff. Yeah, so
all that stuff.
that's about
They
right.
changed that. So like what it was like they had this time before I, knew anything about comics where they changed everything in DC, the lineup, and it pretty much stayed in that same
Yes.
track
Yeah.
until 2011. And when I see the characters on screen or in other places, that's the universe that I have the most familiarity with. Although I had gone back as most comic book people do and read prior to that for DC. But this new world wasn't, like again many other people, wasn't per, per se for me. I dropped a lot of all of my books that I was reading in 2012. Um, I spent a year, gave it a shot, and just didn't like what they did. I still kept buying Vertigo books.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that what they didn't do was they didn't just go all Vertigo, because working at a comic book store in the past and seeing comics, I think Vertigo is not only the best stuff, but the most profitable stuff. More people I met who read DC comics, read Vertigo comics than any other comic. Like, oh, I read Superman, this, and then I read everything Vertigo.
Right. Especially, I feel like in the 90s, that entire decade, Vertigo was hot.
Well, yeah,
It
Vertigo
was a hot
was
thing.
created in the '90s, basically off of like the Sandman riff that Neil Gaiman created. Everyone was just like, let's just riff off of this and make this sort of like a shared-ish sort of universe, but also we can do crazy shit that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it was kind of
Anyone
also
aware?
what I would argue it was what Image
It was
is now, is how I would
Yeah.
almost describe it, right? Like, it was pre-Image, but at DC. Also, like, it could be wrong, but I feel like most creators
So much creativity in that.
retained control in this stuff. They published there. It was exciting.
Or approval, or like Neil Gaiman, I believe, has approval over like where Sandman can be used, or where
Right.
some of the characters he created in that can be used. So
Exactly.
he's got to be okay with it, which is neat. That is a very cool thing. And the last things I was buying from DC after I kind of stopped buying comics a few years back, was Vertigo. Like, I
Yeah.
finished the runs that I was reading. Like, I basically finished those story arcs, and then I just quit DC.
Well,
and
so-
I didn't want to quit. I
Yeah.
love the characters from the, as you call it, we should have a name for this, like the crisis era of the post-crisis, era of
The Nightfall era. No, I'm kidding. Not
yeah,
that.
the Nightfall era, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, yeah, this universe had still so much for the characters, which I guess now I understand all those pre-crisis old fans who are like, I don't understand why Batman doesn't have a kid,
Or why he doesn't use a
Earth
gun,
2.
or right.
Yeah, like what's up with this? I guess I understand their point of view now, but I do think that what the post-crisis did was such a good, such a pre-crisis. I think the problem there is, even though they tried to age some stuff up, it always was pretty static. It always wasn't.
Well, and it was. They did try to age some of the stuff up, but the issue was the era in which all of that stuff originated. And when you have all that stuff as a backstory and a backdrop, you can only do. In fact, the woman you were talking about just did an episode on this. When you have Supergirl making out with the telepathic horse as a part of your actual canon. You can only do so much, maturing.
To be
um,
fair, he was a centaur trapped in a horse's body, and
yeah,
when she
we
made
don't
out with him,
really. I was trying to
when she made out with
oversimplify
him,
it, but
he was not a
yes,
horse. Well, except when she was a horse too.
sure, yes, and yes, they were all horses, and Krypton had many survivors, including apparently a farm, and I mean, so yeah,
Yes, he was the super horse.
and dogs and cats and
Dude, do not fuck with Streaky. Streaky will F you
hey,
up.
Streaky's my cat. Streaky and Crypto. Actually, I always believed if I ever got a dog, I would name him Crypto. But
Did you ever watch the Streaky and Crypto TV cartoon?
no.
It's fantastic.
I
You should
do
watch
know some. I can't really. I shouldn't even say this, but I know someone who's working on an upcoming, or who knows at this point, was going to be an animated DC Super Pets project. But anyways,
it. Anyways, speaking of DC, did you just see what they dropped on their just a couple of weeks ago?
well, so I feel like before we get to that, I feel like you raise a very interesting point, which I completely agree with. I just want to touch more on that, which is, I feel like you're absolutely right that, of course, all of this is because of money or lack thereof.
And
But,
chasing the almighty dollar is I feel, what got DC in trouble. They had a
well, not just
fan
chasing
base.
the almighty dollar, but trying all sorts of new radical, some work, some good, some didn't, ways of pursuing that money. Like the idea of the new 52 as if you have no idea about any of Batman or Superman or any of their backstory, then this is for you. Great idea. The execution, not so much. The digital stuff, well, smart, and I definitely think digital is the future for most things. They were the first real big comic book publisher to really go after that route wholeheartedly. Like
The
they
second,
took
Archie Comics already did that.
they took a lot of risks, and with a lot of risks, some worked, some didn't, and like I hear people like, regardless of your thoughts on quality of product, I've heard a bunch of people say, well, can't this happen to Marvel? And honestly, I think there are two big reasons why this is far less likely to happen to Marvel. One, of course, the deep pockets of Disney that's behind Marvel. Two, like, yes, Warner Brothers is a huge company. Still does not nearly have as much money as Disney does. Two, regardless of what you think about the quality of the comics Marvel has been putting out, Marvel as a publishing platform has basically stayed to the proven path since, I don't know, they began. Like DC was and continues to be much more of the experimenters, the company that's willing to experiment with trying new things and different ways of doing things and whatnot. Marvel Comics has always kind of been more, well, this works, so why should we change it?
I don't know if I agree with that. Like I mentioned before, Marvel came up with Vertigo before DC did, right? Or Black Label before DC did. Marvel did a lot of things.
But Marvel never got
early.
Right, but again, I'm not. So yeah, those were a few imprints that were created at a time, and then of course, if you want to talk about imprints, there's an Ultimate line. But even during the Ultimate line,
the new Universe line, which we talked about before.
Yeah, but the new. So I'm saying within the past 10.
Young adult comics.
So I'm saying within the past 10.
Adventures.
So okay, hold on, and I'll try to explain what I'm trying to say. Within the past 10 years, Marvel really only has one other imprint other than the 616, their main publishing arm, which was Ultimates. That no longer exists, hasn't existed for a while. New Universe and all of that hasn't existed for ages. Um, Marvel also is not as concerned, or seemingly as concerned, I don't know, I don't work there, but from the outside, is not as seemingly concerned with trying radical new ways of distribution. Um, when in terms of digital sales or standard sales, when everything went down with COVID originally, and then with Diamond, Marvel Comics was the one company that you did not hear a peep from. Um,
Disney would not let that happen. You can't talk out of turn.
sure, but the point that I'm trying to make is Marvel Comics, since I would argue almost the 90s, is much less willing to experiment with new ways of doing things. That doesn't mean that they don't put out fresh new original comics or different spins on characters or amazing graphic novels or whatever. It means that their main pipeline, the way they run their industry, has remained primarily the same since, like, at least since I started reading, which was again in the early 90s. They have a proven method of how they do things, and they have stuck with it. DC, and this is going back to your part, I feel like is in the situation that they are in partially because they have been trying so hard to chase these radical new, not just story ideas like New 52, which at the end of the day is a story idea, but the way of getting their product out there. And that costs money, and if it doesn't work, that money is just gone.
I think Marvel has something else though. Besides what you were saying, I think it's got a better like integration with the
Movies and stuff?
movies, cartoons.
Yeah, definitely.
They know how to reach an audience a lot more organically than DC. DC, I always feels like it's your dad trying to get you to watch a movie, which you're gonna end up really liking, but
Right.
it's gonna sound
But it's
stupid
not
when
the
he tells
cool
you the story.
hit thing, yeah.
Whereas Marvel is like, oh, I knew about that because I just heard about it, you know. Because Marvel, they're so like, I don't know. I feel like when I was a kid, I got right into Marvel. I didn't get into DC for a very long time.
Same.
And I just knew Marvel stuff because I've watched something or seen something. I had some like memory of the X-Men pilot being played one time on Sunday morning
You mean
after
Pride?
church on TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then when I finally, Kitty Pryde. And then when I finally went to the comic shop, when I was old enough, the first thing I thought of was, well, I have to find these X-Men out. They were pretty neat, you know?
Yeah.
It was just always there. Whereas DC, even though Superman, like when I was a kid, I had Superman drapes because my parents, I was a boy, that's what I needed. I had no interest in that guy.
Right.
He was boring. He just, the whole idea of DC, like, and how they market to the audience is just, I feel, out of touch a lot of times. Whereas Marvel seems like on the touchstone, like, no matter who owns them.
Yeah. And I feel like that's part of what they, again, were trying to do with the whole New 52 thing. Is just they were so off mark. They were trying to make their characters the new cool, hip, edgy, whatever, but it just,
So I wasn't really, there was this boom in comics and then this crash before I got into comics, but I know about it. And it seems to me
I was in comics at the time. I remember that.
it seems to me that what DC did with the New 52 feels like every comic book that Image put out
In the 90s?
yeah. In that boom time when it was just like all knives,
Leathers and spikes and sex and violence and yeah.
Then
yes.
more violence.
Right.
And then boom. Lots and lots of cleavage.
Yeah.
So much
Agreed.
Cleavage. It was just boys had cleavage, it was just everyone had cleavage.
Yep.
All the time.
Yep.
And that's what I felt like when I saw like Hawkman. I thought for a minute that the first time I looked at it, I was like, he looks a little Wolverine-like. And then I was like, no, it's bad. That's not my Hawkman.
Yeah.
But it just didn't fit. As many faults as I'm sure my universe had to those who came before it, the pre-crisis folks. It just seems to be like so much less. Whereas I think that what the creators of the post-crisis universe, the universe I grew up in, the universe you grew up in, had was like a love for the older, like, version of it. You know what I mean? Like when we got our like I didn't know about this for a long time, but when we got our what's her face, Black Canary, it was like there was a Black Canary and there was all this other history, and what they tried to do instead of just like taking all these crazy ideas is they made one the mother and one the daughter. Same with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman from the Justice Society was Wonder Woman's mother, Hippolyta, and all those adventures were Hippolyta's.
Right, still technically happened and all of that, yeah.
And it was a fun way of like looking at like a real tip of the hat to what had been before, whereas this seemed to be such a. It's like when your kid becomes like a punk rock. Or emo kid or a goth kid, and you're just like, what did I do wrong? It's like,
well, yeah, it's the high school equivalent of I can do Superman, but I can do it better, right?
I can make it darker. It's all just everything got so darker. Yeah. Joker cut his face off.
Oh God.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Or maybe not Joker. Maybe he cut his own face off. Someone cut it off for him, but it got cut off. I think it was
someone else. He paid someone to cut his. He paid, I believe it was a doll maker to cut his face off.
Oh Jesus! I read that and I didn't even remember it because it was so unmemorable. And if you ask me, though, I can tell you all about how stupid Robin died with his freaking. It wasn't the crowbar. It was the explosion. Never forget that.
But well, so so it'll be interesting, and I do have to actually have another thing I have to do. But before I go to that, I'd like to ask you a question, and that question is, what if it could be, if you could have the fizz away? What would you like to see happen with DC Comics in the future? What would be your ideal DC Comics? What would be the DC Comics that would get the Fizza excited?
Okay, unlike you, I did read Wonder Comics. I read almost all the books, and I really wanted to like them. I really wanted to like a lot of what Brian Michael Bendis was trying to do over there, but a lot of it was too trite, too whatever. But what I would do, what I saw what he was trying to do. He was trying to capture that same market that Marvel is doing a great job with and has been for a very long time. And it's what you and I know of as the young adult market. The legacy character market is something that they tossed away years ago, saying we don't want this. Before 52, they were trying to get it back, and what they were trying to do was something different, though. They were trying to create original characters, like Naomi, and do something like different, a little different. So I appreciate that what they were trying to do. So what I would do is I would actually break the comic book company up into 3 or 4 groups.
Okay.
One group, and I wouldn't be like, it wouldn't necessarily have to be an imprint, you know. Like at Marvel, you know, I could read Spider-Gwen, or not, sorry, no, what's her name now? Ghost
Just
Spider?
call it Ghost Spider, but
I can read Ghost Spider.
everybody
I
knows
can
who
read...
Spider-Gwen is. I feel like far less people know who Ghost Spider is.
All right. So I could read Ghost Spider, I could read Champion, I could read Miss Marvel, I could read
Miles Morales,
Miles Morales, and there's a whole little universe of heroes. They exist in a large universe, and they interact with those other guys too. But these guys have their own thing. It's fun. It's a great time. I personally am a huge fan, a huge supporter, a huge cheerleader for Miss Marvel. I think she is a fantastic character.
She's literally one of my favorite new comic book characters to come out of the past decade or so. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
I'm a huge fan of Spider-Gwen, not for the same reasons, just because Spider-Gwen is freaking awesome, and people who don't read Spider-Gwen should know that Spider-Gwen and her, like, what is the universe 67 or 65?
Yeah, I don't remember what...
Earth 65 is fantastic. It's this, the way it's drawn, and that's what really captures you with Spider-Gwen is the dynamic art mixed with the fun and just sweet storytelling. It's got a lot of heart in it. I love just looking. Just sometimes after I'm done with the Spider-Gwen story, I just re-page through it and go, "This was a beautiful thing." Anyway, so that whole thing, they should be doing that at DC. And Brian Michael Bendis, although I have so many issues with Bendis, as you know, I've got this point of view that I think that when he's writing in a small group of 2 to 3, maybe 5 characters the most, including supporting characters, he's fantastic. But when he is doing any sort of team or has any sort of like cosmic idea of his own, it's almost straight trash. I mean, I can't tell you how I felt when I read Norman Osborn say to Madame Hydra, "What's up with that?" She goes, "What's up with what?" He goes, "What's up with that?" I was like, who are these people?
Yeah.
These are not characters. These are just the voices. They're just puppets for your little conversations with yourself.
Yes,
and
it's a meme.
That's fine. That's fine because people bought it, they loved it, who cares? But for me, Brian Michael Bendis is really good when he's trying to do a small, tight story with a great guest. Alias, which people think when I say Alias, I think of a TV show. It is a comic book starring Jessica Jones for Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
And it is one of the best comics Brian Michael Bendis has done. Probably the best thing he ever did at Marvel. And possibly one of the best things he's ever done. And it is fantastic. And it is just Jessica and like 6 people.
Well, Alias, of course, Ultimate Spider-Man. I mean, I even really enjoyed his run that he did on Daredevil. I do completely agree that, like, if it's a more focused, singular character, he's amazing, but he gets lost if it's...
What we need to do is give him some small characters. I don't know if he's still got a contract there. I thought he did. We do. We still give him. We give him if he's still got a contract there.
I believe he does, but I'm not sure.
Keep this little idea of a young adult universe and give him a Spider-Man character. Like, you know, there's tons of Spider-Man out there. They don't have to be called Spider-Man to be Spider-Man. There's plenty of comic books I've read, and I was like, oh, this is Spider-Man. You know. But it doesn't, you know, just give him a Spider-Man or an Invincible, if you will, type of character, and let him just focus on that little quarter of that universe, do what he does, and do it well, and then just give some other young writers who are out there some small books and keep them in that universe too of we're going to push these to the kids. We're going to give kids young adult adventure comics. I mean, half the reason I love Spider-Gwen is it's a fun adventure comic for kids, not necessarily the heavy bullshit of Iron Man or Captain America. It's fun.
But see, but the problem with that is I feel like they tried that.
Well, no, that's
And
what I'm saying.
it
We break
didn't
into
succeed.
four.
But
What is that? We take a handful of books and make it that, right? Let's say, give me like, 40, what are you saying, like 20% of their, what are we down to, like 35, 40 books?
yeah.
Okay, let's just say 40 since I'm breaking it into four. 10
Okay.
books for young adults, 10 books, and you can put in that young adult book, like, you could also put in there, like, Batman Beyond. I would love to read more Batman Beyond. They were doing that before, they could keep it up. That's really for young adults, that
Yeah.
universe. So you can do stuff like that. And then the other two, bring us back some Vertigo. Bring us back some Vertigo. Give us some of that cool Sandman universe stuff. Doesn't have to be the Vertigo imprint. It just has to be that like Hellblazer. What were other good Vertigo titles? The Dreaming, Sandman, Hellblazer.
Swamp Thing for a while was off in the
Thing for a
Vertigo
while.
corner.
I mean, you can do that. The other imprint would be the
Animal
superhero
Man.
imprint. Yeah, Animal Man was a big one. And then you can still do the superhero imprint. You only really need 10 books for superheroes. I mean, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash.
Yeah,
5 books right there.
I think that was the other issue, and I mean, like, look, Marvel's as guilty of this as well. But when you have 15 Batman books all competing with one another, all at the same time, it's
You don't need
why?
15 Batman books.
Right.
You need maybe 3. And one of them shouldn't have Batman in it at all. One of them should be
Right.
like Streets of Gotham, where
Right.
it's like, oh my
Agreed.
God, it's Robin.
Yeah, so
running
2
around.
and like a Gotham-centric thing. I agree. Like, yeah, you don't need 20.
And then the last 10 books would be geared for the adult audience.
All right.
You
I like
could
that.
make them. You can make them continuations of New 52 stories. You can make them continuations of Earth 2 stories. You can make them continuations of something
Black
that's
Label
or something.
yeah.
Black Label, something new, something different, just for a bigger audience, just for the other audience. But the thing about it is, what they really need to do is integrate with their television and film group. And that's what Marvel does great. Like, when Marvel did Marvel Rising,
Yeah.
I gave a shot to, and I personally, it was way too childish from my point of view. And I'm usually behind most Marvel things. But they need to get out some kids-friendly stuff.
But it
and that's where
didn't,
those
and it
10
worked
books
for that, I
come in
felt
handy.
like, right? I mean, it worked for that. It worked for introducing a lot of these younger characters to a younger audience.
Yeah, I mean, I watched, when I watched the what was the first Marvel Rising, was like The Chase or something. And
Yeah,
then it
with
was-
Quake and, yeah.
And yeah,
Ghost
they had
Rider or-
and they introduced both adult type characters like Quake, who we know from like adult books,
Right.
as well as Ms. Marvel and Squirrel Girl and stuff like that, which are more like Squirrel Girl's kind of more of an irreverent type of book, where the Marvel Girl is more of a young adult type of book. And they put all these new characters together in a format that was geared to kids, like probably from the way I perceive it as like 5 to 7 or 10.
Yeah, I was going to say 10, but yeah.
Like that's that hit. And then they threw it out there, and now all of a sudden they've got kids going, "Mommy, I want."
And like for
Squirrel
free
Girl stuff."
on YouTube. Like, you didn't even have to pay to watch it. It was
Exactly.
free.
And you had kids going, "Mommy, I want Squirrel Girl stuff," and you're
Right.
like, "What is the Squirrel Girl?" And all of a sudden you got parents going to the store, buying Squirrel Girl comics, or ordering them online, or buying plush toys. And I'm saying that vertical integration that Marvel can do, because they know how to touch touch
Yes.
out, then like touch out. Know how to reach out and touch the audience. And,
I completely agree.
DC broke it down to those 4 categories: adult, comics. I feel like comics are young adults, right? Like I don't think that Batman needs to be saying I'm the Batman BITCH. He just needs to have a good story.
Right.
Whereas, if you want people to say curses all the time, you've got your Black Label over there, the whatever it is. Because I think, to really reach people in comics, you don't need to be too much of anything. You need to be, this will sound really weird for people who don't know who I'm talking about and want to dig a nerd with me, but you need to be like Chuck Dixon all the time. Be like totally not offensive and get the job done, but also, do it in a way that's fun,
that's
and
entertaining.
Challenges you challenges you just enough to give you the energy to get through the minutia that makes up the story, and not to like, you don't have to curse it all or sex it all out. You just have to get us in the middle. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a reliable, and be able to give us the story on a regular basis and have a good time. We don't need Batman to like go back to his bat roots and throw his whole family away. I love that like Batman has like 30,000 bat kids.
Yeah, right. For his self-proclaimed loner, he's always surrounded by people.
Exactly. And for me, by the way, never forget Black Bat. Hashtag never forget Black Bat. Because
or spoiler or freaking blooper.
Well, at least I think Spoiler got her name back, where like,
yeah, she did come back in the Rebirth era. She is back. Black Bat, I don't think is back, but yeah.
I just can't get behind Orphan. Black Bat is her name. And Black Bat is who Cassie should be forever. Justice for Black Bat. Hashtag Justice for Black Bat. Cassie, that's her. She's not Orphan. Orphan is named DC. So that's what I wish. That's my dream team of the DC of the future, is that they connect up correctly with their marketing people and their cartoon people and say, sure, keep Young Justice going, which would be great for me. But also, let's make some kid cartoons and feature young adult heroes in them and put them on fucking YouTube for free and see, Marvel and DC are always stealing each other's ideas anyway. This is a direct copy, and I think it's a great idea. Just put them on YouTube, let people see, and I understand they might have a problem with picking out some of these characters if they want to use like actual legacy characters instead of creating something new. But let me tell you something. I would love to see a Batgirl kids cartoon where Batgirl is running around solving adventures with her group of friends, just like Miss Marvel does in Marvel Rising.
I mean, I was just thinking, you just made me think of this, but like, in terms of the whole synergy and integration and everything, you know what else was happening in the 90s when the Batman titles and DC was doing much better?
They had the cartoons, Batman, the animated series.
When was the and then Brave and the Bold and Justice League and a whole, and Beware. And when did we have? When was the last Batman cart? Nobody's running off to see the Ben Affleck. No kids are running off to see the Ben Affleck Batman movie. When was the last time there was a Batman cartoon?
I would say there was a short cartoon after Batman Brave and the Bold, which I love Brave and the Bold. But let's face it, Brave and the Bold was made for either little kids or old people. Like,
and it was more of a return to the Adam West stuff. But I once I made my peace with that, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah.
Oh yeah, it's completely silly, fun. Like it's fantastic. But after that, I believe they had like Batman, Beware the Batman or something.
Yes,
Like,
the CGI, which I
digital.
also thoroughly enjoyed, but it only like lasted a season or something.
Well, was that oriented for adults or kids, or like was that like Batman the animated series, or Batman Strike, or is it like
Beware the Bat, Batman.
yeah? How was that? Yeah, was that like for kids or was that for adults?
I mean, I think like the best type of cartoon shows, it was made for anyone. There was nothing really in it that kids couldn't
So was
watch.
it? You don't think it was too mature or
No,
too
no,
kiddish?
no. I definitely would not put it on the same maturity level as say Batman the Animated Series, which was more aimed for like high school kids and up.
Actually, it was aimed
But
for junior high kids, but it was just so smart.
yeah. But yeah, I think that was the last one, and that was like a long time ago. I mean, so how are you getting new people, new kids interested in the Bat Family? Unless
The only thing, the only thing we
they
have,
are
the only thing
already.
we have are the Justice League action, right? Have you watched any of
Although,
those?
when was the last new produced episode of that? Most of them are just cut up snippets.
Yeah, they're all about 5, 10 minutes long, right? And they
Yeah,
only
but they're
play
not new.
and they play like at all hours on like whatever the Cartoon Network or whatever they were playing them.
Right.
It was difficult to get that together in one place and watch it. I went through when you came to YouTube at one point, and so I went through the whole series on YouTube, and I
Yeah.
loved it. But if you're not
But
like,
it was impossible to find, and yeah.
yeah, exactly. Kids, it was great for kids, but kids have to be like aware. They have to be put in their face by their parents,
Right.
and like putting
They're
it on
not
the
going to
same
go out of
time.
their way to find it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, but you're right. That was the only thing that I could think of, and all
And
the
that was a while
cartoons,
ago.
like we talked about before, were for adults. All those DC animated movie universe cartoons were for adults. Like they weren't for little kids. Like I would never, if I had a child, would have never let them watch any of those DC animated
Me neither.
universe movies.
But I don't
Never.
think they were meant for them either. They were meant for
Right,
adults, so
But like,
who
how are
already
you marketing?
know
How are you?
who these
How
characters
are you
are.
growing your audience?
Right.
How are you growing your audience if you're
Right.
not marketing to the people coming up?
Exactly.
All the people who like comics. Maybe there will be more, but you're not going to get any more from like just what you're doing. The only way to get more is by like getting them while they're young. Like
Right.
you're going to be like, hey,
I mean, it's
you
true.
know, smoke this DC comic. It'll take you all the way up to the sky, up and away.
Yeah.
It's how you generate, and I don't understand how. I don't understand how DC even thought that any of this was a good idea. The two best DC cartoons that I saw within the last 10 years, I'm gonna F you not, have been Batman Ninja, which was so goddamn out of its mind. It was brilliant. It was so
Yeah.
bad. It was amazing. And Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, that was fun. Yes, I enjoyed that
It
one.
was.
That was so much fun.
Just a good time. Those are both maybe.
And I feel
think
like
they're
younger
both for kids, actually.
kids, yeah, I mean, Ninja maybe
Yeah,
slightly
I
older,
would
but I
admit,
feel like
Batman
younger
Lego.
people, yeah,
I should say Batman Lego was also pretty good.
yes.
But those are the only things I think that kids would watch. Like kids were not watching any of, or would not want kids to watch any of the adult universe
I
stuff.
wouldn't let a kid watch Justice League Darkseid War. I enjoyed it, but I would never let a kid watch that. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, and when I would totally let kids watch Batman the animated series, like
Right.
even little children like would get something out of it. It's got morality tales and like.
Or
and
Brave and the
athletic-
Bold.
Well, definitely Brave and the Bold over any of those, actually.
Right. And
That
they
is for
still,
little kids.
I mean, you might then later pick up a Batman comic and realize, okay, he's somewhat more, but at least you know who this is.
Yeah, you know who he is. You get the
Right.
general idea. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, they have like put, instead of like trying to entice new viewers, they have put like a wedge between them by like making everything, by rebooting everything and then making it so insular. Like another
Yeah.
thing about the New 52 is, like you were saying, with a story idea, and these stories they just went at it. They didn't like the universe we grew up in. You would get the stories, but they weren't so like you could jump into a Batman book and it would like kind of catch you up real quick, and you kind of understand what was going on. But I feel like the New 52 was so story driven. Everything you had like almost the code you had to like discover. With
Yeah.
everything
I
you
mean,
picked
it
up.
did very quickly become that way.
And I feel like that again is something that you wouldn't want. What was great about the universe before it is it was open for a lot of enjoyment from people who didn't know what was going on and could catch up or would like look into what was going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did that with the movies. They gave us like 3 movies that were fun that kids could watch. The Lego one, the Ninja one because it's so goddamn nuts, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one. But like, I'm not sure if when they did the adaptation of Dark Knight Returns, was that 2005 or?
I don't know the actual date. I do know that even when they were producing the animated films following the New 52, there were some that were other stories, and I believe
There were other stories, yeah, like
it came out during that time. So
like Justice League
like
Adventures,
Gotham by
that was a good one.
Gaslight and sure.
Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
Was done by the team who did the DC universe, the DC animated universe, the old stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they did do a few of those, but even those, most of those were for adults. Like I'm never going to show anyone under the age of like 17 Batman Dark Knight Returns, the animated show, the animated movie, because
Right.
that's a heavy F.
Or
Right?
even Gods and Monsters. I mean, Batman was literally drinking blood. It's pretty.
Gods and Monsters was so good, but I would agree. I would.
You
say,
know, there
like,
was supposed to be more of that, but it wasn't successful enough.
I heard they did a web series.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a second season followed by
Oh.
a few more movies, and designs were even done and have been leaked. But the movie, the Gods and Monsters movie, did not perform well enough to warrant that. So, but it was supposed to be a whole thing.
It's pretty, like you were saying, it was pretty bold and adventurous to think that you could create a basically ultimate universe of DC animated characters and try to parlay
Where, like,
that
a bunch
into
of
its
them
own thing.
Aren't even who they are, right? Like Batman in that world isn't even Bruce Wayne.
No, it's more like an Elseworld.
Yeah.
It's like an Elseworld Justice League universe, except as a movie.
Right.
And that was great about it, but also, you're right, like, people who don't know who Batman is and come to that movie and are going to go, what the F is effing going on? And why is Wonder Woman not from an island in the Pacific?
Yeah, right.
What's going on? Wonder Woman's an alien? I don't remember her being an alien. Wait, she's a god? I don't understand. What's alien god? What's happening? What's the actual app?
Yeah, I definitely think those were better if you went in with some prior appreciation of the DC kind of universe. But
Yeah, it's an Elseworld title, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely.
I mean, if you don't know who
it's
Big
a
Bird
title,
is
Justice League
before
Elseworld.
watching Gods and Monsters, then I don't know if you're really going to enjoy Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
But anyways, I do have to run. But
It's a shame, but it's fun. And,
Yeah.
It's a good time.
and we
Yeah.
and
Because
again we apologize about the delay, but we had some stuff going on, but you can definitely look forward to these on a weekly basis. And thank you so
Not
much for
issues.
joining me, Fizza. You still there, Fizza? The
I'm
Fizza?
right here.
All right. Well, thank you. And we've got issues. If you liked this episode, which we all hope you did, please be sure to hit the like and the follow button so that you'll be notified as soon as a new episode goes up. And follow our channel. And
Subscribe.
Scratch?
Yeah.
What is happening over there?
I'm just whispering in your ear from across the inner tube the word subscribe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think I said, hit subscribe, hit the bell to get notified. We're here for you. So thank you.
We are here for you, and we have got all the issues.
We've got all the issues for we've got issues. Excelsior.